Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. I actually inspire people to birth confidence, to birth their books and business ideas, dreams, visions, passions, and goals, as well as help them discover peace amongst infertility. After going through my own sets of traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life. I am not barren. I continually birth my purpose every day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we all experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your hardships and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your life, so you can breathe fire on this world. This week's episode is called the Semicolon Effect. And some points we'll cover are, has our society made positive strides in bringing mental health awareness to the forefront? How can we support children and adults going through depression? And how we can bring unity amongst the isolation of COVID during these times. And I have my friend here, Coretta Doctor, to speak on this topic. Coretta Doctor is a professional public speaker, author, disabled U.S. Army veteran, business strategist, and 29-year career woman in the field of government and commercial contracts. Coretta is a master negotiator and business coach. Socially, she is the people whisperer, creating strong business connections and instituting a culture of positive team building in all of her endeavors. Coretta is an active field advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. She focuses on positive messages, and her speaking topics are primarily on mental health, social wellness, and personal development and growth. Coretta is also the founder of Communique Magazine, an international publication launched in the summer of 2020. She is fierce, she is fabulous, and she is my friend. Welcome, Coretta, to the show.
Thank you, Blaise. I am so grateful for this opportunity. Looking forward to our discussion.
This is amazing. So people don't know, but when I was in the UK, we both spoke in Birmingham, and immediately we had a connection with your team, my family, just instant connecting of hearts and souls. And it's been a year, and wow, here we are speaking on my podcast, and both of us affecting the world in a positive way. And I'm just so honored to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This is fantastic. So yeah, this is a really good topic to have all the time, but especially September is Suicide Prevention Month. We're in crazy times right now. Pandemic, the world is experiencing things we've never dealt with before, and it's causing a lot of mental health problems. And yes, I just wanted to have this open dialogue with you to talk about how we can bring this topic further to the forefront, help each other, create unity and not separation, and really bring awareness of how to invoke that semicolon effect, not end it with a period. Like, actually, there is more to the story, and we need to encourage that, don't you think?
Absolutely. And when we look at any topic, there's always more to the story. I really absolutely love the topic today, the title, the semicolon effect, because it automatically allows your brain to think further.
You know, like, we all go through things, and, you know, we all have situations, hardships, setbacks, traumas. We all go through something, but we have to see some sort of positive to say, you know what, this is not how my story ends. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I can get help. I can get support, and help encourage that, because I think once we get into that isolating, depressive state, it is really hard to see a way out, see the semicolon, don't you think?
It is. And, you know, it all starts with empathy. Yeah. We have to take a moment to understand the emotions behind any and every action. And once we put the first part of that is to put the thought of what's going on first. Think about it. We don't want to just react. When we see things happening to people, we don't want to judge or assume. We have to sit back and think, what if this was me? Or this could be me. And then place the same amount of empathy on those situations that you would want to happen in your own.
Absolutely. I think empathy is so vital to help those suffering in depression and mental health issues, as well as those in the ripple effect of people that commit suicide. It is a domino effect that is affecting families, young and old. I just want to go back a little bit and see where you came from in your journey to get here in educating people and bringing this topic, empathy and awareness to mental health, and just showing the world how important it is to have this conversation. Maybe just tell us a little bit of your journey and how you ended up where you are today.
So absolutely. Several years ago, I went through a very serious traumatic experience when I discovered the facts surrounding my adoption and where I was, in the family tree. And so shaking that up and falling out of it and not really being clear emotionally, it's tough to adjust your entire world when you find out who your parents are versus understanding who you thought they were, and, just taking a complete shift. And I was 44 years old when that happened to me. So that put me into a place and a space that wasn't familiar. It was dark and it was not readily something that people could talk about because it's an unusual topic. It happened in a family that we didn't expect it. No one really knew the truth. And when it happened at such a time in my life that I was having so many great things happen that it spun off this really bad emotional roller coaster, which later I found to be true. A statement that my therapist gave me is, you can handle, a period of lows, and you can handle a period of highs. But when you peak with highs and lows and highs and lows, and you're battling the good times and the bad times and the reality from each, you struggle more when you are dealing with trying to be happy. Oh, then you're sad. Then, oh, there's something great happening. Oh, so with all of the things that was happening to me, it just was a bad time to, at 44 years old, discover that now I have a new life. So I had been living two lives. I had been living the life of the unknown child, like, who are my parents? Then I found out now I have these two lives, and I got tired of living both, that I just wanted to end all of it. And that's where I ended up in a facility, in a hospital. I couldn't leave, and I was forced to face my demons. And it was just basically not understanding life and trying to figure it out. Those folks there in that mental facility, they helped me. And with that help, at first I rejected it. I didn't want it. I was very angry and I didn't receive it. But when I let go and realized that the only way I'm going to get out of here, number one, is to receive this help, then I realized, well, this is life. You only get one. You must apply what you learn and what you're taught and learn how to deal with the cards that you have. So what I did is I took what I learned, I calmed myself down, I got better, and then I looked back at the things I wrote in my journal. How did I get here today? I got here today because the mental health facility advocates, counselors, and therapists provided me empathy. That was first. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. They didn't feel sorry because I was going through all of these bad things and all my childhood trauma was raising its ugly head. They didn't feel sympathy. They gave me empathy. And when I realized the difference in how it applies to people who are going through traumatic experiences, I realized that I could do that too. I could be what someone was to me, to others.
Your journey, even processing being in a facility and having to deal with your issues, because I think right off the hop, humans tend to reject and say, no, I don't want to go there. No, I don't have a problem. But once we can just take a step back and realize, okay, I'm willing to look at it now. I'm willing to even open up that discussion and talk about what's affecting me and my problems. There lies such a revelation of ourselves and a pathway to heal, to move forward, to grow as humans, but we have to actually have that internal struggle, don't you think? Like that is part of the process. Yeah.
It is. Yes. I mean, you have to know that when someone is going through a storm, it's like driving a car in the rain and the windshield wipers are there to kind of wash away the water. They can't see clearly. They can't see without the assistance of the help of those wipers. They need that. And so us on the outside, you know, you can see into a car, but they can't really see out. The fog and the rain and covering them up. So reaching out and providing empathy to someone who needs it in a time, if you've ever experienced having someone give you empathy, you will always understand the value of giving it back to someone else.
You know, I've talked about this before. I've become more open of my dad faking his own death 17 years ago, and he returned home. You know, I had such judgment in the beginning of that, of like, how could you do this? And I think that is a stigma. People like, how could they do this and leave such a ripple effect of pain? And it was selfish. And it's like, no, they can't see clearly. Like you said, they can't see through the wipers, right? They're not making logical decisions. They're not, it's very complicated, and we need to have that empathy and that mercy and trying to understand they're not okay in that moment. They're not making logical decisions. And I had to process that. I was resentful. I was angry, was hurt and devastated. But then I've had to go through this process of learning, like, my dad came back. And that was incredibly brave. And I had empathy. And that created a pathway for healing for both of us versus shutting it down and not talking about it and not dealing with it. And, you know, that was 17 years ago. And that was a very taboo back then. Like, it literally got shoved under the carpet. But do you think in 17 years to date, do you think we are making positive strides in bringing depression and empathy and this topic to the forefront?
So we are making strides, but we're not where we should be. We are making strides. And let me stop first and say to you, I'm very sorry that you experienced that. And I'm also in a position, I guess, of thinking that you are an educator yourself because you have experienced something that many people will never experience. So that is why I believe that your spirit is such that you're such a caring spirit, because you know what it's like. You have been the victim of something very painful. And again, I'm sorry that you experienced that, but you know, it speaks to your character and why you're so caring and understanding now to other people's needs. And so I will continue and tell you, yes, we have. Here's what I can say the best that I have seen in bringing this topic forward is the agencies that are pulled together, such as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. That is the biggest agency that I'm familiar with, because they not only offer support to people who are struggling with mental health, but their focus is on the family members. So immediately when you said what you went through, I immediately thought of that, because we need organizations that know how to help the family. We need people that can talk to and continue to talk to the people that are the recipients of the residual pain that comes from someone that either attempts suicide, goes through with a suicide, or are suffering a mental health condition that may lead to suicide. That's the good thing about that one organization. They don't focus on just one aspect of this entire problem. The second part is we are not where we want to be, should be, because there are still tons and tons of stigma assigned to the emotions related to this problem. I'll call it that. And the real truth here is that many of us still don't want the help. We acknowledge that there is a problem. We acknowledge that we want help, but actually standing up and getting it is a whole different animal. And there are some barriers to that, Blaise. The workforce. We can't go to work and say, I have a mental health problem and I need help. We can't readily do that in every situation. There are some jobs that will immediately remove you, which is rightfully so, out of position if you come forward with that. There is no scale. There is no gray area. It's black or white. So we have to know that there are people who will hold back on getting help because they're in a position that they have to work and they need their money and they're afraid of the repercussions that come with it. Although there are measurements in place to protect people. There's HIPAA, the Health Insurance Privacy Act here in America, that is to protect us. But we don't feel protected when we have to open up and talk about our brain, what's happening in our soul. We don't feel protected. Once we open our mouths and let it out, we feel that we've just opened the window to our soul and everybody can look out. And that's okay. But we don't know it's okay until we see the feedback that comes. We don't know it's okay because we often talk to people who are not equipped to help us. We talk to our neighbors who may not be able to assist, our family members who want to help but don't know how. So I say to people often, it's very, very careful decision when you decide that you're going to go out and get some help. And like we just talked about, help is different now than it was 17 years ago. Be sure that you're getting help from someone that is authorized, approved, ready, willing, and available to give you the help that you require. Not all help is the same. You won't receive it the same. You can't apply one person's help to you. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for us to say, well, here's the organizations. Why can't they get help? It's a challenge because we got to get people to understand what it is they need.
Conversations to be had to even understand what we need, how to articulate that to ourselves, and then learning to communicate that with people in our lives, whether it's family members, your spouse, your friends, your workplace. Like, how do I articulate that? And then educating society as a whole how to accept that, how to navigate that. And I think the semicolon effect applies to many different things, not just don't commit suicide. There's still more to your story. It's like, don't put a period where there's still another conversation to be had, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. And excuse me. And the greatest of what we're talking about here is that there is more, because the world is actually embracing it more now that I know further in our discussion, we're going to talk about this coronavirus and COVID-19. I don't want to overstep, but I do believe it's a part of this discussion right now is that it's changing because it's becoming more evident during this downtime. We're seeing it more and more people are needing the help. So it's almost a bandwagon effect. Well, it's okay if, my coworker asks for some mental stability support because I'm also a coworker in that same office and I feel the same way. So it's becoming more of that where people are not as ashamed to ask because now they feel like there's a blame. We all want to blame something, and that's okay if that's going to save our lives. But what's important about that is people are coming forward more now because there is a global curtain hanging over us, and some of us don't know how to lift that. And with this opportunity to say, I have had time to think about where I am in life. I've had time to see some things that I can improve about myself, and I want help. That's what I see happening during this pandemic.
We have made positive strides, but we are nowhere near where we need to be. So we're seeing more and more suicides, more and more depression coming up and talking about it, which is good. But how do you see us getting from where we are to closer to where we need to be? Because I often think people think of where we need to be and it almost seems such like too great of tasks. So then we stop. We don't even keep trying because we feel it's so overwhelming. So as a really good advocate in this field and an expert, what are some things we can do to help us get there?
Well, things like what we're doing right now. We're talking about it, and we're going to share this message with people around the world. We definitely know that talk saves lives, okay? It does. And again, I believe that because right now and the culture of our world, the climate of our world has given way to let people see it's okay. It is okay to acknowledge the help that we need. Now, what I think is going to also make a big impact on the success of people that are struggling is for them to be able to have some resources that are not so much tied directly to the workplace. A lot of people only get help through their employee-assisted programs or through, medical, go to the doctor, and then the doctor has to assign them over to a therapist. Nowadays, therapists are making it easy for people to just come as a direct client. They don't necessarily have to go through those two things. With people being out of work right now and at home, there's lots of ads coming on television and all through the internet, and there are people who are having shows, again, like the one you're having now, that's allowing for them to see some different areas that they can go to on their own, quietly, privately, and then when it's time for them to get that help, then they are able to go and share it with someone else. Because that's the first part about getting help and being a success story, is then going out and finding others that need it and sharing your success and hopefully pulling them in the right direction. I think another thing that's going to help, or is helping, is that the education part with the definitions, truly defining what mental health means, what mental wellness means. What those words were, like you mentioned, taboo. But if we define and we clearly articulate what it means, everyone in the world has a mental health status. We all do. There's just some things that impact our mental health that we need to correct. It's not a permanent thing. It's not a forever thing. It's a right now, let's get it taken care of thing. Let's discuss it and let's be a team and let's work through it. Defining what a mental health diagnosis is often surprising to people. When I say depression is a mental health diagnosis, they say, oh, but we're all depressed. No, we're not all depressed. We claim it. We may say it, but we're not all depressed. We may have signs of what depression is, and that's where we go to get our help. We don't allow for the stigma of the definition to scare us. So I think that those are some things that are showing some improvement. It's showing the way that we're going to get to where we need to be.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important, like you said, talk saves lives. Let's start having that conversation with our children, with our partners, because you know each other. So when you see somebody being very sad or pulling back, don't just let them pull back. Like, have the conversation. You can just talk about it and be open. And like, I remember talking to my husband so early in our marriage, like I said, I've been battling a rare disease, and it was very, very life-threatening in the beginning. It was chaotic. We didn't know what was happening. I was struggling to keep my full-time job and stay on it and be healthy because I was so stressed about work and doing good at my career. And I asked him, I came to him, which was actually, in hindsight, like very brave, I think, of myself, that I said, I think I might need to take a stress leave. And this was like, we've been married 12 years. So 12 years ago, so still very taboo. We've made great strides, like you said, in 12 years even. But like he said, no, you'll end your career. You'll ruin your career if you take a stress leave. And I didn't. So then I pushed. And then I caused more sickness because I was not getting rest and giving myself healing time. And fast forward even, I think it was about 5 years ago. So 7 years later, he came to me on his own, and he looked at me and he just said, I'm sorry that I said that to you. I should have given you that permission to take some time and heal, because we learn so much more about mental health and stress and how that plays on your physical health. He's like, I didn't know enough about stress even 7 years prior to say, hey, maybe you just need to take 6 months and support that. And I'm sorry, it doesn't change it now, but I am sorry. And that was just, the conversation was like, thank you, I needed that. right? Like I needed that conversation and saying, yeah, I needed that time, but now we can't go back, but I can take a step forward today and say, analyze my mental health and take a step for that, right? And have someone in your life to support it, or go find the support. Go use the semicolon, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And what I want to say to you is you hit the nail on the head. Having someone that knows you is so important in this journey of mental wellness. Mental health is not it's not a one person's fight. You definitely have to have someone that has a high regard for your psychological and emotional well-being. You need someone that is going to see when you're not functioning at a satisfactory level. They need to be able to notice the signs. And it all comes back to talking, communicating. When you notice that someone is not being themselves, step in. There is a responsibility that we have in our lives to take a look at the contribution of our family members when we notice the children are not talking and they're not participating, and one of the parents or the spouse may be withdrawn. Talk, because the absence of that communication leaves you clueless, and where they may not be the person to give you the answer, they can certainly give you solutions to resources that can help. A behavioral adjustment is something that we can all see ourselves going through. It's better when we have to go through a more positive behavioral adjustment, when we have someone that understands what we're going through.
We do need to have these conversations to support mental health in our family, our circle, our community, especially in these times. People are facing many things, many problems. We are in a worldwide pandemic. We have a serious virus. We have job loss, financial difficulties, pressures, homeschooling, uncertainty, major things happening in every one of our lives. And COVID is causing depression. It's causing mental health issues. And even in my own community, we've had 8 suicides amongst men, from, young people to adults, going on in my own community. And that's just saying one city. We're seeing an uptake in suicides, in depression, and things happening. And how can we promote connection and get connected amongst this isolation?
Again, it goes back to your immediate surroundings. It really goes back to many, many things. There are people who truly believe that mental health has a direct correlation to something as simple as your diet. It's staying healthy, staying organized, staying balanced with your work and professional life, even during the coronavirus. We get stuck in the house. We're doing work from home. We're living from home. We're not getting the exercise that we typically would get just from a matter of getting in the car and driving to an office and back. There's more movement there. So I think some of the things that we can do during this time is to take a very close look at what the structure of our day looks like. We have to ensure that we are not only providing for ourselves, but for our family members as well, a structured day that allows for mental breaks. We have to find opportunities to rest our minds, to rest what we're thinking, because if we do not, we're going to find ourselves in a new mental health crisis, maybe one that we've never experienced before. Maybe it's something that's going to surface that's been deep within. And the only way that you can control that is to control your environment on a day-to-day basis. Start with a good breakfast. Start with a good meal. Plan your day as though you were, at a Fortune 500 company planning out their day, okay? Apply some of the tips and advice that you see coming from the organizations, just like, any other advice you get when a hurricane is coming or some storm. We listen to the news, we listen to the professionals, and we go and we execute. You have to do the same thing for mental health. The CDC has Center for Disease Control. They have a lot of information out there talking about dealing with mental health and coping with mental health during this COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things it talks about is stress. Managing stress can definitely be one of the top factors to controlling our mental health and mental wellness. Some of us are worrying about job loss and worrying about, the whole pandemic in itself, but we cannot allow that to take us over mentally. It will break you. So some of the things that we can certainly think about is finding activities that we never did before. And when there's something that we know we love to do a little more of it. And then take care of yourself and your community. If you find yourself getting out and being helpful, remember we talked about empathy. We talked about the things that we know that make us feel good. Go out and do some of that for the community. When you help others cope with their stress, it definitely will alleviate your own. Now, obviously, we don't want people to go and overwork and over-contribute and over-deliver because it'll pull away from you. And you have to be careful to maintain a balance with that. When you know that you're not well, get treatment right away. Don't let things hang on. We're not in an environment where you can be sick and stay sick for a long period of time. Take breaks from watching the media. Stay away from the internet and listen to stories that are so Debbie Downers, as we call them, things that can just continually pull us down. It's good to know information, stay informed, but take a break from that. Take care of your body, like we talked about, eating properly, rest, make yourself sleep, take a nap. Make some good time for you to call up a friend. Maybe we can't go visit them, but chit-chat on the phone, talk about hobbies, and then definitely talk to your children. You, as the adult, we know what to do, okay? We know where to go. But this is different for children. They are limited. They're limited in their information. They're limited in their experiences. Take care of children during this time. When they're happy, you're happier. When you start noticing a decline in the emotional stability and the people that you love and that people around you, is going to impact you too. So just like on the airplane, and they say, put that air oxygen mask on yourself first and then help someone else. You want to do the same thing. Take care of you, take care of your family and your community.
Wonderful. And all these conversations and bringing up, because I noticed when, children commit suicide and the families are reeling afterwards being like, I didn't know, they never said anything. And it's like, we need to have these open conversations. And like you said, we have to put the oxygen mask on ourselves. So even having that conversation with our young people, just saying, life can be hard. I have problems too, but we're working through them. I'm navigating through them. This is how we do this. This is how we own our problems. You're not alone. Because often I think that's what we think. We're so isolated and it's just me and I'm washed up and I just feel this way and it's only me, and it's not. This is a systemic problem. We're seeing this across the board. It may look different slightly from each person, but we're all going through that struggle of feeling loneliness and isolation and not good enough, and something happens and we get this dark cloud. But we need to have this community of conversation to allow us to feel together and united versus it's an isolated situation like infertility. Like my miscarriages, I was feeling it was just me. But the more I started to talk about it, I realized I'm not the only one going through this. The whole world is going through this in some way or another. But I found a sense of community and togetherness by owning it, by speaking about it, right?
Absolutely. And I think that when you take all of your emotions and you say to yourself, well, this is what I'm going through. Imagine someone without your experience and without your tenacity and your endurance through things. Imagine them going through it. I always do the grandmother question, and I say, what if this was my grandmother? She didn't have the same resources. She didn't have the same organization. She certainly wouldn't have had the support system. What if it was her? How can I translate all of the education, experience, and information that I have to someone who just may not know, right? And that's how I provide a lot of my empathy. When I see someone struggling, I say, now what if that was my grandmother? Okay, because we all love our grandmothers, right? When you learn how to transfer your skills and experience and education to someone who just may not have it, it helps you too. My strength comes from the ability to help others. So coming together during this time, I have found myself speaking on, I took a break, okay? I took a break from talking. I think my last speaking engagement may have been in Birmingham or maybe in Iceland. But I can tell you it's been more than a year. But in the last 30 days, I've spoken on 3 different talk shows or podcasts on this very topic. So it's coming together, not just for the purpose of the group, but for yourself as well.
You know, we feel a level of exposure when we are vulnerable and sharing with someone. It's scary to own that side of you. We live in a world of like social media and like everything is the highlight reel and promoting the good stuff and masking it up and showing this perfection side and not being able to show the real and the raw and the ugly because that's, you know, messy. But the moment I started to realize that, like, when I was vulnerable and just showed a little bit, it gave a pathway of safety for the next person to connect with me and let their guard down a little bit. So if you're worried about that or scared, it is scary. And sometimes it's not met with like acceptance, but like the glorious things and connections and people I have encountered and maybe the life you've saved just by being vulnerable yourself that allowed them to share, hey, I'm not feeling so good either. Do a check-in. Like you said, get out of yourself and go be of service. Go check in with somebody and you'll be amazed of the healing component of just getting out of your own fogginess and helping somebody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, one great thing that this COVID-19 has done for people who are somewhat, dealing with not maybe necessarily suicide ideation or ideology, or maybe they're not, deepened into their mental wellness or not mental wellness. Maybe they're not so far that they're just on the tip and they're not even sure if they need help. One thing I can tell you that this time has done, it has given people time to see truly where they are. So, for example, there are people who will say to me, well, Coretta, I get sad sometimes, but I'm not really depressed. Or I get a little down, but I don't need any help. And then 2 weeks later, they're saying, this is getting worse. A month later, I can't get out of bed. 6 weeks later, I haven't cleaned my house in a month. And so the progression is there. So we stop them and say, now look, you have all this time on your hand. Now it's the time to get yourself some help while things are slow. Don't allow this to compound on you. So take advantage of the time. Talking to someone who doesn't know they need help is just as important as talking to someone who does know.
That's a good point, because I know I experienced that. I was severely depressed after the 3rd miscarriage, and I was like, no, I'm okay. But I wasn't okay, because you were like, no, I'm not that. I'm not depressed. I don't want the label of that for some reason. Let's remove the stigma of the label and just allow yourself to be like, hey, I'm not myself, and articulate that to yourself. And first find safety in that, even verbalizing it to yourself. There's safety in that. There's no judgment. It's just you. Allow yourself to say, hey, I don't think I'm okay. Like, I don't think I'm handling this okay. And that's okay to say. That's safe to say. It's not weak. And then allow yourself to find somebody in your circle that you feel safe with, that you can verbalize it to them and allow that connection. And that is the first step. And I think that's what we wanted to talk about a little bit of, like, how do you actually be the change when you feel like it's such a systemic problem and it's everywhere and you're battling it yourself? Like, how can you be the change in your sphere with you? And I think the step, and I think you would agree, is just talk saves lives. And so I'm going to start talking to myself and talking through this and talking to the next person who is close to me that I can trust. And then I'm going to start talking to outside my circle and just expanding that conversation. Do you think?
I do think, and it's what they call minding your mind. One of the ways that you can become a change agent is being an example by talking through what you've been through. Sharing information is vital to the success of someone who doesn't know they need help, because they will identify with who you are, not necessarily with the diagnosis. They will identify with what they have heard you go through as the struggle, and perhaps that will lead them to see before they reach the diagnosis stage that they have identified that there is an issue. It's the same exact thing when you read symptoms of a disease. You look at the symptoms and you say, it puts it on your mind. It sparks the conversation that you're going to have with your physician, you're going to have with your therapist, and you're going to see what the next steps are. So being a change agent means standing in the foreshadows of people who may be ready to talk, they may be ready to share, but they're not willing to accept that diagnosis. But you can stand up and tell them all about you. This is where I was. This is what I realized. This is how I got help. And this is how I am here today being able to help you. And that in itself is the biggest change. People want to hear from people who have gone through some things. They don't always want to hear from the organizations that have the pamphlets. They don't want to receive the information that looks like a stigma. They don't want the tag of, suffering from depression or, any type of mental health diagnosis. But they'll listen to Blaise, Coretta, and any other human that they can identify with. You ever heard the saying, if someone likes you, they'll like what you do? It's the same thing. If they like you and they relate to you, they will listen and they will apply the lessons that you're teaching them to themselves. And it may well help them see they need help too.
Yes, compounding. And I feel like that is the definition of like the depression and the spiraling of one thing happens and then it just triggers so many other thoughts. And it was one thing that became basically a period for your life, and you feel like that's the end, stop, right? And when we're like, okay, my husband made an interesting point one time. He's like, can Blaise do that fix it right now? And I said, no. He's like, well, why not let your future self worry about it? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, can you actually change it today? And I'm like, no, because if you can, then take a step to change it, right? But if you can't actually do anything about this big, massive problem in this very moment, why not let yourself off the hook and say, tomorrow's Blaise could figure that out? And it gives you a semicolon, because it's like, I don't have to figure it out right this minute. I can't change it. So I'm going to let myself off the hook and allow my future self to work out this problem, rather than put a period where I could have put a semicolon and extended the story and problem solved and figured a way out. And it allows us to have another day. And I feel like that's inspiring and gives us hope. And I think that's the word we need, is hope. There's still hope. There's a way to figure it out. And there's connection. And you're not alone. And you're in this world for a reason. And that's the semicolon, right?
That's the semicolon. Absolutely.
Yes, I love it. And this is just an amazing conversation. And so what all do you do to help people? Like, what are your next steps? I know you've got this magazine, you've got TV shows, where you're really bringing this message to light globally on such a great scale. Like, where can people connect with you and learn more about what you do, and where can they go with you?
Sure. So what my goal is from this day forward, I like to say that because every day is a new start to doing something great. But from this moment on and forever, I plan to speak positivity in every situation, in every project, in every piece of who I am that I share with the world is going to be positive. So in my new project, I have started a magazine, Communicate Magazine, and every article is about positivity. Even if the story is hard, even if the story is emotional, painful, at the end, we pull out the story that is rarely seen. We want to hear what good came out of this, what positive showed through all of the pain and the darkness. Tell me what I can see that would be a beacon of light for someone in their darkest moment that have shared the same type situation. So in the month of November, I am seeking all types of information, support, articles, and resources that will be presented in my November issue, where we're focusing on the abuse of opioids and how drugs let me say this, how illegal drugs or prescription drugs can lead to depression and death in teens specifically, but in everyone. So I'm focusing on anxiety, topics of things that can happen to any and everybody. There's no socioeconomic class of diversion that we can say, well, this is just for them or this is just for them. There's none of that. There's no culture, race, or bias in any way for the things that we're going to be talking about. My website is simply communiquemagazine.com, and it's spelled COMMUNIQUE magazine, MAGAZINE.com, Communique Magazine. And that is pretty much where I have decided that everything there will have a positive spin. It will have a message of hope, encouragement, and there will be signs of empathy throughout the messages that we share. I just congratulate you, Blaise, for being such a bright star in such a place that can often look so dark for people. And from the moment that I met you, we connected. I instantly knew that you, not just your message, but you, the person behind the message, was important to me. I felt your energy in the room, and so did everyone else. And we thank you for being that person for us, that one person that someone can look to and say, if she went through it, she got through it, I can too. And that's what I think about when I hear your story and I feel your pain that you've gone through. And future you, I'm so proud of that term that your husband mentioned. I like that. The future you will look back on the today you and congratulate you for doing all that you do.
Or just such an inspiration. And I know like the feeling is mutual. We just connected, and your message, and definitely that was even a year ago. And that was the first time I publicly had spoken about my dad. And you were in that room and you were there talking about, talk saves lives. And so I just feel like we were supposed to meet, and it's just an amazing message to say, I can own my story. It is ugly. It is messy in some parts, but that is part of my story, and that is beautiful. And it will be the key to your purpose and unlock somebody else's prison that they're in. And we can all join together and create unity, even amongst our isolation, even amongst our pain. And so I just appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with me. Thank you so much, Coretta, for coming on.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. It was a great call.
We'll just recap what we talked about today. Talk saves lives. Empathy is the key. There is hope for each and every one of us. We all do have a purpose. Don't put a period where there could be a semicolon in any pocket of your life or somebody else's life. And so that was just the conversation to really, again, bring this topic to light about mental health, suicide prevention, and just creating a culture of conversation and empathy and creating unity amongst mankind. And so thanks so much, Coretta, for coming on. If you want to learn more about my consulting programs, purchase my book, or have me speak at your next event, please visit blaisehunter.com. I do have a free offer for everybody. I have a video on my website on the free offers tab. It's a video, Map Your Life. When we feel lost, when we're driving, what do? We Google Maps that stuff, right? So let's go to the map and find our way back out of anxiety and overwhelm to peace and balance. You can get that video on my website here. And that's it for this week's episode. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable, lean into the difficulties, and have those open conversations so we can rise up as the heroes of our lives, and let us breathe fire together. If you've enjoyed this show, please subscribe and support Blaise the Trail podcast. Reviews are always welcome and very much appreciated. Thanks for listening. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaise the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.